guys, it's Emily from the Penny Mama. I am back today with lesson 5 from our Silhouette Bootcamp mini lessons. Today our lesson is all about the divide tool. The divide tool is not something you use all the time, but it is useful in certain situations and designs. I'm going to show you 5 different ways you can use the divide tool. If you missed last week's lesson, it was on using the crop tool. The crop tool is probably my most used tool in the modify panel. But let's move on to the divide tool. What the divide tool is it lets you overlap shapes and make a design out of them. So I made a square, all these different shapes for you. And I'm going to highlight the shapes. I did them all different colors too, so it's a little easier for you guys to see. I'm going to highlight all of these shapes. Oops, I don't want those ones. And we're going to go to Modify and Divide. What this does is it breaks apart everything that's overlapped. So I'll show you. Kind of looks like Pac-Man there. It broke apart everything that was overlapped in some way. Kind of like a puzzle. It's all individual pieces now. This is fun, but why would we want to do this? So I will show you 5 examples of why we want to do this. The first one is the Venn diagram effect, where you have 2 shapes and you want to create the perfect outline of where the shapes were. So I did circles, and to get the perfect circle, a little key or a little insight for you guys is when you're doing a circle, you want to hold down the shift key as you're making the circle, and that will make a perfect circle. Same with square. Perfect square, perfect circle. So make sure when you're doing that to hold down the shift key the whole time and you'll get your perfect circle. So I did this, made 2 perfect circles. What I did is I just duplicated this first circle, filled them in with color so it's easier to see. So now you're going to want to move your shapes over, lapping each other. Just kind of how far you want it. And then when you're doing this whole divide tool, you can do up to 8 of the same shapes, of different shapes, but up to 8 shapes can be done at a time. So then I'm going to hold down the shift key down and select both shapes, go over to my modify, which is this square and this circle on top of each other, and I'm going to click divide. Now you can see I have 3, oh hello, I got to undo it. Now you can see I have 3 different shapes. I colored the bottom one so I could make it easier for you guys to see when I did it. But now you have 3 separate shapes. One thing this is super useful is creating perfect borders. You can see this in the square that I did. Let's see. Sorry, here, right here. In the square, the good thing with this is if you have rounded edges or a heart and you want to get it just perfectly spread apart, this divide tool is fabulous so that you can get exactly perfect borders for it. So let me just move this over for you. You can do this so it's easier. I took the grid off. You can put the grid back on so when you're doing it you can go by the squares and get the perfect amount, but let me show you how I did this. So go over here, select square, hold the shift key down to make a perfect square. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this square, move it down to where I want it. You want to select both squares, over to Modify. Modify is already up. You can also go up here to Object, Modify, and Divide. So what that does, then you can pull it down. You can be like, okay, I want to figure it out just perfectly, and you can move them to where you want it just perfect. So you have the perfect spacing. You can use the grid. I undo the grid so it's a little easier for you guys to see. Okay, so that's kind of how you do it. Simple, easy. I always fill in when I'm using different pieces, I always fill them in with color. That way I can work with them and see where they're at a little bit better. But that's how you do that one. Next, we're going to go to this love. This one is for creating negative space. You can make cool designs with words overlapping a shape. I overlapped the word love with a heart, and then I deleted the negative space. What you would do is you would cut out this in pink, and you would cut it out, well, in light pink. This whole love section would be in light pink, and this whole love would be in dark pink or whatever color you choose of vinyl. You want to make sure you group them together. If I were to move them right now, it's not grouped, so let me group. So that when you move pieces, it moves together. Oops. Hello, I need to get this over here. There we go. Then when you move the pieces, it all moves together as one. And then same with the pink, you want to group that all together as well. So let me open another thing and I'll show you on an empty one. All right, let's write the word love out. I always use, one of my favorite fonts is Bebes New. That's one of the ones I use pretty much all the time. So I'm going to write the word love. You want to make it pretty big. Kind of just stretch it out. Make it bigger. One thing I do when I'm doing designs like this is I go down to the character spacing, and you want to make sure you get them as close together as you can. It makes it a little bit easier when you're doing projects like this. Okay, next I'm going to go to my library. I'm going to pull my heart in. Whoops. Did you see my battery is almost dead? Guess I better plug it in. Okay. And kind of put it to where you want it. And I'm going to color them in so it makes it a little easier to see. So let's pick colors. Purple. And let's make this green. Now you're ready to divide it. What you want to do is you want to go click the love, click the heart, go over to my modify panel over here, and you're going to want to divide. Now what I want to do is I want to go through and I want to erase all this negative, this space right here, and delete it all. Select, delete, select, delete, select, delete. As soon as you're done with that, you want to group everything together. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to move it all apart. You're just going to have a nightmare trying to get it all moved apart. So you're going to group this part together. And same with this. You're going to group this all together. Then when you move it around, it all moves together and it doesn't give you a headache as you're trying to put it all back together. Okay. Next thing you can do is make really cool custom shapes. So, here we go. For example, I wanted a square with 2 rounded sides and 2 sharp or pointed corners. So what I did is I took and made 2 rounded squares right here. I just overlapped them how I wanted them, colored them. You can see on the bottom kind of my example what I did. So I overlapped them. So now I colored them each. I'm going to shift and hold to have both of my squares. I'm going to divide them. And if you can see, I move them apart. What I have is I have a square with 2 rounded corners and 2 sharp corners. If I would have done this with a round square and 1 pointed square, I would have had 1 round corner and 3 pointed corners. Sometimes when you really want a super custom shape, it might just be easier to go and find the design. But stuff like this where you're like, I just wanted a rounded corner with 2 pointies. You can just play around with the divide tool and make the shape that you want. So yeah, the last thing is doing using it for layered vinyl. This is a car decal. It's an oval with a 3.1 for a half marathon. If I were to put this on the car, it would be one red and one green cut on top of each other. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. And it would be a little thick because I would have the red and then the green on top of it. So what I want to do is you want to make it one single layer. So this is how you're going to use the divide tool to do that. So what I did is I made a red oval right here, and then I wrote the number 13.1, and I placed it on top. What I want to do is I want to select the whole thing, and I'm going to divide it. And what this did is it took out, oops, okay, sorry. First you want to group those back together, because when you, okay, just a minute. Goodness. When I divided it, took the compound path out of it and ungrouped it. So you need to group it back together. And for some reason I'm having a hard time, since probably because I'm videoing this and trying to do it for you guys. So I would normally group this together. I'm just going to pull it out so I don't waste time on the video. But you want to group it together. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time. But you want to group it together before you pull it out, so that way when you cut it, it is exactly the same. So what you do is you would cut the red oval, and then you'd cut the green out. But then when you put them on top of each other, it is one continuous, it's the same thickness, so you don't have the overlapping thickness. Sometimes you can see this when you have a character and your character has all different colors. You don't want multiple layers of a decal on your car with different characters. You want to make sure that it's all one single layer. So this is a great way using the divide tool for layering vinyl. To review, let's go over again. We did the Venn diagram, the love, we did the creating negative space, making our own designs, and then we also did making car decals. And so that's kind of using the divide tool that I have to show you. That wraps up our lesson 5. Join us and continue with me on this boot camp journey, and I'll see you guys next week for lesson 6. Thanks, guys.